Welcome to Boyd's Car Classic. You've joined me in the midst of this 1967 F100 refurbishment, rebuild, whatever you want to call it. This is the 5th episode of the series, so if you're new to the channel, do go back and check those out, and it'll make a lot more sense what we're up to this week. I'm happy to say this week I started sponsoring one of my favourite resources for American car sales, I suppose, in the UK. A Facebook group called Unusual Car Sales, run by a great guy called Nigel Taylor. Please do go and check them out. I'll put a link in the description. It's a great place if you're interested in buying American vehicles or unusual vehicles in general. There's a massive community there of people selling those, and they also have a parts and projects page as well if you're looking for a project, perhaps like this one, to tackle on your own. So last week was a bit of a frustrating one for me. It felt like things weren't going right, and I kept kind of hitting dead ends in terms of the jobs that I was trying to do. But I'm happy to say that this week we've ticked off some big jobs in what we're going to be the journey, I guess, to getting this thing finished and back on the road. So let's go and check out what we've been up to. All right, on the cooling system. So I managed to find a thermostat on my parts shelf, which is pretty cool. Tested it, works fine. And so I'm not sure if you noticed before, but the hose was really snagged down here the way it was set up, because it had to go over and then down into the old thermostat housing, which pointed up like this. So it created a weird angle for the hose to get to. So I didn't want to have that kink in it. It didn't look good. Probably would have impacted its effectiveness. So I've reconfigured the hoses to go in straight. And basically I costed up the cost of replacing the hoses against the cost of getting a new thermostat housing. And it ended up being cheaper for me to do this. And it's nice and shiny and smart. And what I can do with this is, because it's 90 degrees pointed forwards, I can connect it to that hose nice and neatly. And it'll look, like I say, clean and tidy. So I'm going to take the opportunity now, because I need to, it's a little bit thicker, so it will fit under there, but not with the thermostat. So what I think I'm going to do is just take off this alternator bracket completely, so I can fit that up. But also at the same time, I'll take the opportunity to clean this up and give it a lick of paint, because what I am going to start moving on to soon is to start cleaning up the engine bay and making it look as good as possible. So that's one step towards doing that. And I'm really looking forward to sort of degreasing under here and painting and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm going to do that now. And then, like I say, we'll be happy with the cooling system pending fitting a fan. All right, so I cleaned off the alternator bracket with a wire brush, then I've degreased it with alcohol. And now I'm just going to give it a couple of coats of Rust-Oleum Combi Color, which is a sort of black direct to metal, similar to Hammerite kind of product, but I think they're American. And this is an American car, so we have to use American products. I just really like this stuff, so I'm just going to give it a first coat. And then I'll come back and give it another coat in a bit. That'll look a lot more in keeping with the shiny carburettor that we've got on there. And we'll gradually make the whole engine bay look a lot nicer. I like this stuff. It kind of goes on and then levels itself. So yeah, cool stuff. Come back in 15 minutes, do another coat. So with the alternator out of the way, I was able to fit up that new thermostat housing. I think that looks really nice on there. This hose, like I say, runs a lot better now. I think that's a lot neater. And what I've also now done, so Dan was over for a bit yesterday and he helped me. What we've done is fit on the fan, the electric fan that we're going to use onto the radiator here. So this is a 16-inch electric fan, relatively inexpensive. And if you're thinking about fitting one of these, they're so easy. They have these sort of plastic rods that you push through there and then push a fitting onto the end. They have springs to give them a bit of tension, and you just basically push it through and then snip off the fitting on the other end, and you've got an electric fan. And these are, you can set the polarity, so you can either have it like we're going to do, which is pulling air through the radiator, or if you've got the space on the fronts, you can put it on the front and have it blowing air through. So really good bit of kit. And this, what I've often had on classic cars when people have fit an electric fan is they just put a switch on the dash, but I don't remember to switch that on often. So what I'm going to be doing instead is I've installed a temperature probe into this port here. So this was a killer to get out actually. I had to buy a special socket and use my impact gun to get that out, but then put in this probe here. And then when we come to doing the wiring, which I think there'll be a lot of next week, I can then wire that in. So when the temperature of the engine block hits, I think it's like 82 degrees, which is about when the thermostat's going to open as well, that will then turn the fan on as well. So it means the thermostat will open up, send the hot water through here, and the fan will come on at the same time and start cooling the coolant and keep the engine nice and cool. So I think that's, you know, that's the coolant system looking in a good place as well. And I think once the alternator bracket that we've painted is back on, I think it's going to start to look, you know, like a much fresher engine in here as well. So yeah, that is another job ticked off, and we can be quite happy with that. Okay, so over the weekend, I reflected on what I was going to do this week and what were the big things to tick off. And it occurred to me, actually, it's probably going to be wise for me to make these wheel tubs now before I put the fuel system back in, because obviously fuel and welding, they don't like each other that much. That's where you can have big explosions, and I don't want those. So I'm going to look at fabricating these tubs now. So this is going to be a challenge for me because it requires precision, and precision is not my middle name. However, I'm really excited about doing it. I think it'll push me, and again, it's about learning new skills and making this look really cool under here as well. So what I plan to do is to make a cardboard template. So effectively what I want to do is box this in. There's been a line cut already that I can kind of follow, but what I am going to do is be making it, I don't have the ability to curve metal here, so I'm just going to kind of make it up, along and down. So kind of like a, I don't know what you'd call that, but that kind of shape. You'll see when I do the template. It's kind of being cut fairly straight, so I know what I've got to weld up to. But one thing I need to be aware of is that the hinge has got to fold into this space. So I need to basically measure where the hinge is going to come to, mark it off, and I'm going to have to leave a notch in there, which isn't ideal, but that's just the way it has to be because the hinge has to fold into that part there. So the wheel tub will kind of come over and there'll be a notch cut out there. But it'll do a better job, I suppose, of covering up the wheel, stopping rubbish coming up into the engine bay, because we want to get this nice and clean and shiny in here, don't we? So yeah, what I'm going to do is measure that up, mark it off, get some cardboard and start to create a template that I can then use to start to bend up some metal and fabricate the wheel tubs. Okay, so I've cut out some cardboard. I've measured the width that it needs to be, and I've also measured where I need to cut out for the hinge to fold in. And now what I just need to basically work out is how it's going to sit. So I think we probably kind of want to follow this line. I think that would kind of aesthetically make sense. So if I kind of go there, and then if I shove that under there, I think it wants to look something like that. So if I get my Sharpie, mark, it's not my Sharpie, it's my white pen, I'm going to mark that off there. Where is my Sharpie? Classic. Normally I have pockets full of Sharpies, not today, so I'll mark just so I know that there, and I can mark that off there. And yeah, I think that will work. So now we need to make this end panel here. So what I might do is go and get some tape, cut that off where it needs to be, and then I can offer up some cardboard and then copy that profile, because it's going to have to follow this line down here as well, so we get a nice sort of straight edge on that side. So yeah, I think hopefully this should look fairly neat and tidy and in keeping with what's there already, which is quite angular. I know, like I say, I'm not doing a curved tub, which I'd have liked to do in an ideal world, but this thing basically just serves the purpose for me. A lot of people just leave them out when they've got an air ride, but for me it's just about stopping crap coming up into the engine bay. So as long as it serves that purpose, then it's good for me. So yeah, I'll go and cut this out. Right, so that's kind of taped in. Not holding the best, it's quite dusty, but should be enough for me to poke this in here. And then what I can do is trace this profile here that I'm going to need to weld to. There. And if I do the same along the top here.
You pick your weapon, and I'll pick mine. And I suppose we'll love some other time. Go clean yourself up. There's blood on the floor. I know we tried. We just can't even the score.
Right, I'm going to cut that out, then I can attach it to that, and then we can offer it up and see how it fits in the space.
You pick your method. Just give me a reason. If it's all the same, I declare it open season. You pick your weapon, and I'll pick mine. Then I suppose we'll love some other time. Love some other time.
Okay, so I cut out the two panels, and now what I need to do is put the bends in it. So I've measured the angle that I need to get it to, and that's pretty much 45 degrees, that first, the one at the back there. So I'm going to use the metal folder to fold it to 45 degrees, which is obviously half a right angle. Fairly easy to work that one out. So that's about it. A little bit more because it flexes back, so yeah, perfect. Now I'll flip it around and do the same on the other side. All right, so that's the folds put in, and I've just basically set it all up ready to be welded. So I'm just again going to just be tacking. It's 1.2 mil steel. I'll be tacking, doing it along the inside and then stitching it all together. And then yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm quite nervous, but I think so far, I think it should be all right, you know. All right, there we go, all welded up. It's probably obvious to anyone watching who can weld really well that welding's still a skill that I'm working on, but I'd really encourage anyone to throw yourself into it. Even just welding this up, I know that I've gained some capability and confidence. And you know, if this was bodywork with a skim of filler, that'd be really passable. I think once we put some nice thick black chassis paint on it, it will look absolutely fine. So yeah, it's just one of those things that requires practice, and this has kind of been pushing me to the very limits of my sort of confidence and capability, but it's nice and solid. I've ground it down and it looks quite reasonable, and when it's in and when it's painted, I think it will do the job. So yeah, quite happy with that. All right, so I've offered that into place and the fit looks okay. I think I'm gonna have to do a bit of sort of bashing and modifying just to get to close some of those gaps, but I think what I'll do is tack it in the places that are already good, so I can then sort of fettle with a convincing hammer the bits. So I've just got a nice, you know, surfaces are sort of close enough for me to be able to weld between the two, fairly straightforward. But I think when you look at it in the big picture, I think it's going to look pretty good. All right, it's in. So that was really hard work, I have to say. Like I say, pushed me to my sort of limits of my capability, and the welding was really challenging. But what I will say is that what I was doing at the end, I progressively got better as I went through. And that's, like I say, for me, that's a big part of this, is about what I learn as I go along. Because again, when I have to tackle stuff like this in the future, it will get easier and easier every time. And I will, of course, have to be tackling the other side, which is going to be a little bit more challenging, which is why I decided to do this side first. So yeah, I think once it's all been painted black, I'll probably clean up the welds a little bit more in some of the bits that I couldn't reach with the grinder. But I think it looks good. And I think what I'm particularly pleased with is the way it follows that line. I think aesthetically that kind of works, because it could have, you know, like I say, it would have been nice to have been able to put a curve in there, but I think against the line of that rail behind it, following that line, I think it works, and I think we can be quite happy with that. All right, bright and early on Tuesday morning, that was Monday's efforts, and today I want to get this done first thing. So what I've done is use the same template for the actual tub, because I want there to be some symmetry between what we're doing. But obviously on this side, there's a little bit more faffing because it's been cut out there. I've also already repaired where the battery sat. So this actually is one of the only bit of rust on the truck was there. So I've cut that out, put some new metal in, and we'll be putting a nice new battery tray on there. So that's nice and solid now. But what I need to do is to plug that hole. So I'm cutting out the template for this side piece, but I'm going to include a little bit of extra metal that we can fold into that gap there to fill that, and hopefully, yeah, get it all sealed up nicely. I'm not sure why they cut that out. I don't know if there's anything I'm missing that I need to run through there, but I haven't spotted anything. So it shouldn't be a problem. So I'll get it sealed up. Well, that's the left-hand tub welded up and cleaned up a bit. Yeah, looks good. So I now need to try and work out if I can get it in. So I put this extra tab on to try and fill that gap. So I'm probably going to have to offer it up and shave it down a bit to try and make it perfect. But I just thought if I'd kill two birds with one stone rather than doing a separate bit, that's probably going to be a better idea. So yeah, let's see how it fits. All right, well, it doesn't fit great. I think I've cut this fold here is too far that way. I think if I fold that flat, I can close that gap down a bit. But I think if I do that, it should be okay with a little bit of fettling. So yeah, if I do that, and then what I'll start to do is then just cut this and bend it and sort of hit it with a hammer to get it into the place that we want it to be. But yeah, I think we can make this work.
she was going long. Deborah walked away 'cause she knew what she was doing, knew what she was doing. Had a sweet dream when just a little girl.
All right, it's in. And that was really hard again. Took a lot of bashing and manipulation to try and get the panel in and get it all lined up and working well. And as you can see, you know, my welding isn't amazing. And given that I'm not a great fabricator either, there was a lot of trying to fill gaps with welds. And I really wanted to show you this kind of warts all view to just demonstrate something. And that is, you know, I've turned my hand to a lot of things in my life. I've built bathrooms and kitchens and built walls and plastered and electrics, plumbing, you name it. I think one of my greatest weaknesses and my greatest strength is that I don't like asking for help. I'm a man, so I don't like asking for help. And I'm an Englishman as well. I don't like putting people out of their way. So I end up doing a lot of stuff myself. And when I have seen professionals do stuff as well, oftentimes what makes them professionals is the ability to make it look good in the end. And it's the end product that really counts. You know, I'm gonna get the grinder out, get the die grinder out, clean up all those welds and make it look nice and just show you that hard, you know, I think Matt Armstrong says hard work beats talent, and I'm not sure that that's the case, but certainly hard work helps to bridge the gap in talent. I would say it's probably more accurate. So whilst I might not be a talented fabricator and I'm certainly not a talented welder, I'm willing to put in the graft to make a good job of it at the end and do it myself. And that's something that I'm really proud of and is really important to me. So I'm going to crack on cleaning that thing up and make sure it looks really, really good. All right, so I've ground back the welds now. Hopefully you'll agree that it already looks a lot better by the time I've got in there with my die grinder, which I can't find at the moment, but I will get into those tricky corners, clean it up a little bit more, and then obviously the whole thing will be getting a nice lick of paint. I think we can say we can tick that job off the list. That was very satisfying, very hard, and I'm tired now. Well, after last week's debacle with mounting the air tanks, I have now made some brackets. I was able to reuse what I'd done before. And then, like I say, I made these L-shaped brackets and welded them all up. What I will do is offer them up, make sure that they work. And then these will be getting a lick of paint, again, to protect them because they're just plain steel at the moment. And I'm also going to put end caps on the ends of them just to stop any water and stuff getting in those. But they should hopefully do the job and mount the tank nicely underneath the bed. Okay, so whilst I've said this cab is incredibly solid all the way around, sadly, even this has not fully escaped the ravages of metal rot. So there's a little hole here, and you know, I suppose you could be tempted to just leave it or cover it over, but I think what I am going to weld it up, because this is sort of double skinned. So if you imagine when you're driving along, water and stuff gets in there, it could easily rot out the bottom of this altogether. So let's get it sealed off and weld it in and clean it up. And then we know it, again, it's going to be good for another 60 years. Yeah. Right, so I've cut out a little tiny hole there, just the bits that were rotten. And that's all pretty good metal next to it. So it was obviously very confined to one place. Now, interestingly, there was a load of sort of mud and rubbish in there. So I'm going to give it a hoover out, but I wonder whether, because that is almost inside the cab, whether something had fallen in there, but it was wet and was just kind of sat there and almost rotted from the inside out, because there's nothing else around here. So yeah, but like I say, we'll put some new metal in, make sure it's good for another 60 years. I've cut out the rusty bits, cleaned up around it with a wire brush, and then I've made a little repair panel to go in. So my plan is to kind of tack the bits that are straight and let them sort of go nice and solid, and then tap it around with a hammer to get that curve. I think it would be that's probably going to be the best way for me to get it as accurate as possible, and then weld it all the way around. Then I'll clean it up, give it a little coat of primer and then a bit of red spray paint. It obviously won't match, but I need to protect it. And like I say, because it's going to be down behind the bed, no one will ever see it, but at least we'll know that it's solid and protected. The hole is gone. So yeah, I welded that up and I've given it a coat of primer. And unfortunately, what I'd like to do is just leave the primer because it's kind of in keeping, but primer is porous, so eventually it will let water through. So what I'm going to do instead is just give it a coat of some random red spray paint that I've got just to protect it as a top coat. And then yeah, that's another job done, and happily I can say we can pretty much put the welder away now, so that's good. All right, now I've done all the welding under the cab, under the bonnet, hood, and that cab corner. I can now finally get this super cool new fuel tank in. So I think we can all agree it was a worthwhile investment. It's nice and shiny and clean. So what I need to do before we pop it in, I guess I'll just do it here because it's a bit easier, is attach the fuel sender to there, and then we'll be able to pop it in. I've also bought new rubber hoses and the rubber connecting on the outside of the vehicle. So I just thought, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound, let's just renew them all. And again, make sure it is good for a long time. So if you haven't seen a fuel sender before, basically this is what sends a signal to your fuel gauge. Basically it's a float, and obviously when it's full of fuel, that passes that signal onto the fuel gauge, and then as it runs out of fuel, then the gauge goes down on your dash. So good to have a nice new shiny one of these. The last one was not in a good way, so we just need to carefully pop this in. Not before I put this on, actually. So I've got a nice new gasket for it too. Okay, so I have popped the filler neck back in, and I've replaced this gasket with a nice new rubber one because the other one was really brittle and cracked. And then in here, to attach the fuel tank, it's fairly straightforward. Let me just put you on a slightly wider angle. It sits in these little rails here. There's two on that side that kind of clip the bottom in. And along the top, there's 3 bolts which go in there, there, and there that hold it in. And then it's simply a case of connecting up the filler hose, connecting up the fuel pickup, which this is where the fuel gets sucked out, and connecting up the fuel sender. And then that's in. We can put the carpet back and we can put the interior back. So like I say, I think that looks great, doesn't it? Really nice to see. And I should show you really, the stuff that came out of the old tank had all evaporated and just left a load of rust in the bottom. So I think it was in really bad shape, and I think this was a good thing to do. So yeah, another step closer. So that's it for another week of Boyd's Carlton Classic. As I say, I think I'm into the 4th week of this build now, which I think officially makes it the longest Boyd's Carlton Classic build to date. And I'm so anxious to get this thing back on the road, desperate to get it back on the road. And it feels like we made some giant steps, certainly tackling some of the jobs that I was most nervous about, I suppose, that pushed me to my limits, really. So hopefully from here on in, it's all relatively plain sailing. So next week, I'll be able to focus on doing the electrics, and I'm going to give this place a bit of a spruce because now the welding's done, I can get rid of a load of the tools that I seem to have got out every tool that I own. So I want to tidy that up a bit, clean this place up, and really we'll be focusing on, like I say, getting this thing, everything working on it, getting it clean, finishing off painting bits with a view to hopefully having it done in the next couple of weeks. So stick with me. Please do like, please do subscribe, please do tell your friends, and I hope you have a fantastic week. See you soon.